sticking with the looking around the landscape of the SEC, the 247 Sports Composite Team recruiting rankings for 2023 after signing day last week finished with Alabama at number 1, Georgia at number 2, Texas at number 3, Oklahoma at number 4, both of whom are joining the SEC in a couple of years. Which we know about Alabama and Georgia, and then LSU at number 6 and Tennessee at number 9. So between Texas, Oklahoma, LSU, and Tennessee, which of those 4 are best positioned to be the threat to be the potentially next Georgia in the SEC or next Alabama?
I would probably point to Texas, and I know the Texas is back thing has become a phrase that's been prematurely used so often that it's now a joke, right? We now use it in sarcasm. Whenever Texas loses to Kansas or something, we say Texas is back. But there's a reason why Texas, I think, has been viewed as this sleeping giant for over the past decade. I mean, we've seen Texas on top of college football in our lifetimes, right? They had a really good stretch of success there under Mac Brown before it fizzled. They are a revenue giant in a talent deep state. And you look at this class right now that Steve Sarkisian is coming in on the heels of an 8-5 season. Texas has had just one win of double-digit victories in over a decade. And yet Texas just signed the number 3 recruiting class in the nation, highlighted by Arch Manning. Really good football players want to play for Texas. They always have. That's still the case. Steve Sarkisian is recruiting well. And I think with Texas coming into the SEC, I think that's going to propel their recruiting even more. I mean, if you were a star football player in the state of Texas, one of your hesitations toward going there may have been, if you want to play in the best conference in the land, that requires you not to go to play for the Texas Longhorns. That is no longer going to be the case. I do think there is real momentum building in that program. If you look at Texas this past season, they had a top 30 national defense. That was the best defense Texas has possessed since its 2009 season, in which Texas lost to Alabama in the national championship. Texas over the last decade has had talented rosters, but I think one of the persistent bugaboos with that program hasn't always been real physical at the line of scrimmage. I don't think they've been dominating guys in the trenches the way you would think a team with that level of talent is. I'm not saying everything's solved at Texas, but I do think that was a more physical team last year. I do think the defense really improved last season, and I do think Steve Sarkisian's recruiting well. I think once the laughs, the guffaws end, I think Texas is trending toward becoming someone a force in college football. Am I saying they're gonna run the universe or run the SEC as soon as they arrive? No, but I do think that the jokes of Texas being back are going to start to blur into reality here in a couple years.
Well, and you also have A&M that seems to be slipping a bit. You wonder if that'll help their recruiting in the future. So I'm going to play devil's advocate, though. To me, the scariest team, if you're in the SEC, is LSU. They won a couple of championships with, I believe, very average to below average coaches. And now I think they have a very good coach in Baton Rouge. And covering recruiting, the kids there that are offered by LSU just don't leave if they really want them. That to me looks like a real setup for maybe long-term success as long as Brian Kelly wants to coach.
Yeah, I agree, Dave. That may have been I may have been a victim of listening comprehension there. Yes, if LSU was a choice, then LSU is the answer. Yes, if we're picking someone who's going to ascend to national championship type dominance, yes, I think LSU is the answer for the reasons you just mentioned. They're the only Power 5 school in a talent-rich state. You're right. You look at the coaches that have won national championships there. Brian Kelly's better than any of those coaches. I think LSU is positioned to be one of the elite programs in college football for years to come here, with the talent that they're going to bring into that program with Brian Kelly as their coach. Completely agree. I think LSU is going to win a national championship within the next few years. If we're looking at a team, though, that I think is down or has been down a little bit, has been punching below its weight, and could really ascend to a higher level, I think that's where Texas comes in.
As far as the East, everybody is so excited about South Carolina all of a sudden. And I've got questions about their coaching staff. And then you have Florida, who can't figure out how to pay players in this day and age when you're allowed to pay players. How do you see the East? Is other than Tennessee, and we know Georgia, who's the next really good team in the East? I'm not sold that it's the Gamecocks.
No, I'm not either. I do think some credit is due for Shane Beamer's recruiting. No question. I think signing top 20 classes at South Carolina is easier said than done. South Carolina's recruiting class this year is its highest ranked class in over a decade since when Steve Spurrier was there. And South Carolina was playing at its highest level of the Steve Spurrier era. That's the last time South Carolina's recruiting was this good. So I do think he's doing good things on the trail. I still hesitate to say, South Carolina is going to be something of a force. I mean, I think they can go 8-4. I think South Carolina can be an 8-4 type program, which is better than what they've been in many years since the height of this of Spurrier's peak. I don't see another top challenger out there. I mean, I really think Tennessee's in great shape. I think Tennessee should be looking at Texas and Oklahoma and the and media contracts and the Big 12 and say, hey, can you guys keep Texas and Oklahoma in that conference as long as you can? Because these division things suddenly are okay. I mean, they're fine for Tennessee now. Now it's still, it stinks for Tennessee that they're designated to play Alabama every year as their crossover rival. But I think Tennessee has gotten itself into the place where it is now firmly in place as number 2 in the pecking order in the SEC East. Florida looks like a bit of a mess right now. South Carolina, I think, is going to comfortably hang out on that next perch and sort of the middle of the pack in the division. I think South Carolina has separated itself from the Vanderbilts and the Missouris of the world, but I still think there's quite a ways to go to be up to where Tennessee is. Now, I say that with the obvious caveat of Tennessee played terrible against South Carolina this year and got whooped by them. But I think where the programs are, I still think Tennessee's on a better perch. I think they've moved into that number 2 spot in the division. I think Florida long term is the obvious program that you would say should be back on that level. I don't know that Florida is heading necessarily toward an abyss here of just like dark days for the Florida program. But I think Tennessee's comfortably on that number 2 spot right now with the way they're recruiting, with the coach they have. I think they're positioned for success into the future. And yeah, like I said, if I'm Tennessee, I'm thinking don't speed that entry along, Texas and Oklahoma. Things are going okay here in the East right now for the Vols.
Great follow on Twitter. Great writer at B Toppmeyer, BTOPPMEYER. I would highly encourage you to check out his work with Gannett and the USA Today Network. The SEC columnist that is Blake Toppmeyer. Blake, certainly appreciate it. Hopefully we can catch up again. Keep up the fantastic work.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, guys. See ya.
Thanks, buddy. Blake Toppmeyer with the USA Today Network and Gannett News Service.